Hello, this time, before going into hair modeling. What are the main methods of making hair? Some shortcut keys used in hair creation. Let's take the time to learn. Hair creation in Blender is largely. It can be divided into particle-based production and mesh-based production. Particle-based hair is usually used in real-life modeling, etc. Mesh-based hair, including the style of characters we will create. It is a concept that is widely used, even in real-life models. First of all, before explaining, let us make it intuitive and easy to understand. Let's add a UV sphere and think of it as a face. It was said that particle-based hair is used for real-life modeling. We're not going to use it. That's why we'll learn particle hair briefly first. Here, I will designate the part where the head will go. It would be roughly like this. I'll copy it with Shift-D and scale it up a bit. If you look at the property window on the right here, you can see particle properties. Click the plus button here to add a particle. If you change the tone side to hair, several lines extending in all directions will appear. Each of these becomes one strand of hair. You can adjust the number of strands by number in the properties. I'll set it to around 5,000 so it can be seen more clearly. In the case of seeds, the generation of this hair is random. It feels like we will work based on a number of randomly generated seeds. Hair length is literally an attribute that adjusts length. Shall we make it this length? If you add this particle, in addition to the existing modes in the upper left corner, there is another mode called Particle Edit. Since it is a comb-shaped icon, I can roughly guess that it will be used for hair. If you click to enter, there are intuitive brush icons. You can adjust the brush size and radius above. This is a brush with a light shape, a homemade brush. I'm just combing it like this. And you can shape your hair like this from the side too. To get the shape, you don't have to comb it in chunks like you do now. I need to brush it more carefully though. It's not difficult because you just move it as you draw it like this. And in the case of this scissors icon, the concept of drawing a cut brush is to cut it like this. Can you clearly see how it is cut? And you can make it a little softer with this smooth brush. With a length brush, it is possible to increase the length of a specific area. If you go back to object mode here, it will look like this. In the children's section on the right, you can set settings to add thickness to these hair strands. You can set it to simple and interpolated. In the case of interpolated, it is the concept of storage that I learned when learning Auto Smooth. You can think of it as providing some assistance to make it a little smoother. Then, you can use simple to control the thickness of this hair and radius. You can make the volume more abundant by increasing the roundness. If you look at it from behind like this, you can see what it feels like to be used in live-action hair, right? And this particle-type hair can be used in other forms as well. Let's add a plane. And to get a better view, I'll move my heads to the side. Raise the plane a little, rotate it at 180, and turn it so that it faces downward. If you add hair equally to the particles, the hair will be created straight in one direction, right? Now, if you expand the kink area below here at children, there are various kink-type curls, waves, and braids. If you press it, a texture like this will appear and you can adjust the shape here. If you go to the viewport display above, the strand shape is set to 2. And you can adjust it to be smoother by raising it. Should we reduce the number of strands a lot to see the grain better? If you reduce it to this extent, the grain becomes more visible like this. To give some color here, add a material in the material properties. Click New to create. Try changing the base color. If you go to the material view, the color is applied. Should we try a color like this? How do you use this? I'll add a camera. Position yourself so that you are facing the hair. I'll also add a light. With solar power. Position your hair so it gets good lighting. Pull the camera back a little further. If you press 12, the rendering shortcut key, the hair texture appears roughly like this. When you take a picture of this itself and save it in the Image tab at the top. Check that you will blend these RAW and RGB values, alpha, and even the transparent ones. Save the image and use it as a texture. You can convert this to create something like a normal map or height map and add materials to it. This texture is made transparent and placed on a single plane mesh. This is called the hair card method. This method is used more often in live-action game characters and other areas than you might think. Now that we've looked at particle hair, let's look at the basics of mesh hair, which we'll be doing in earnest. I'll delete everything that's listed there. In mesh-based hair, there is a method of producing hair using extrudes from a spherical mesh. There is a method of producing it using hair curves. Because most of the universe's main hair is made using hair curves. Let's start by learning how to make it using extrusions. I'm just showing you the method, so you don't have to follow it. You will understand just by looking at it. Similarly, I will specify a range that can be the head and raise it a little bit like this. Here, simply select the edge that will be your bangs and extrude it down. To make it easier, I'll erase half and mirror it. Separate selection by selecting only the head of the generated mirror. Also, lower the bangs on the side and extrude them once more on each side. With this, we will now make an iron mouth. And in the case of the back of the head, cut the loop by lowering the loop at the back of the head. You can specify how many cuts you want to make in the items on the left. Here, select the edges of the parts to be split and press V to tear them. So, in the case of the side hair like this, select the loop, copy the bash, and place it on top. I deleted the center vertex and stretched it out from the side and added it. The reason the shape is awkward is because I was trying to explain the principle. You know? If you put it on like this, you can think of the hair as being divided into 3 parts, the front, the sides, and the back. I tried the subdivision once and also raised the crease for the parts one wanted to sharpen. So, in this rough shape, I added the parts one wanted to detail one by one and added loops one by one, so it felt like I was tearing the hair in a V like this to express short hair. If you feel like the grain needs to be divided further up, add a V to the top like this, and from there, gradually detail and subdivide with loop cuts and verses. The same goes for the back of the head. In the case of the hair texture and hair card mentioned earlier, the texture is simply placed on the mesh created in this way. So what are the advantages of this method? It's easy to add as much detail as you want, and above all, it has the advantage of being very intuitive when it comes to creating shapes. You can work in a very simple way to create the shape you want, so you can just shape it until you reach your goal. It's fun and has the advantage of not stopping frequently. The downside, then, is that if you just hastily shape it like you do now, it's not easy to get a pretty, natural shape. Since it takes a lot of work to make the edge flow pretty, you may need to put in a little more effort and time. And to create something dynamic. There may also be limitations. The second is the hair curve method. You'll be using it for the next hour or so. First, put the existing mesh aside. I'll just delete it. You can add a curve other than a mesh by pressing Shift-A. Let's add a path from the curve. I will raise my head to approximately the actual position of my head. Set this curve vertically at 90 in edit mode. If it doesn't rotate here, then check if the fever point is the medium point. I'll put it in the position of the hair. Leave it roughly like this. Curve is a property. If you go to Curve Properties, if we expand the geometry here, there is an item called Bevel. Here you can see the babs in the round. It becomes thick like this. This one pass becomes one strand of hair. And by moving each point on this curve, moving with G key is the same. You can create natural curves depending on the points. It would be weird if it looked like this from the front, so should I move it to the back? I'll do it on the back of my head. However, even if several of these are added, It looks kind of weird, like Medusa's head. That's why in the Shift-A curve, create a NURBS curve or NURBS circle. For now we will create a NURBS circle. The NURBS curve is used when creating single-sided hair. NURBS circle is used to create thick hair. I don't need to use NURBS. It's okay to just create it intuitively with Bezier. What is NURBS? When you use something like Photoshop, there are cases where you use the pen tool. Based on each of these points, just calculate it using a mathematical formula. You can understand it as creating a curve. That's NURBS. Now press this flat with SY. Even though the hair is so soft, it feels like plastic. If you look at the top of the curve properties, you can adjust the resolution preview. Adjusting the resolution. If you lower it to 1, you will get a simple polygon shape like this. When making hair, you add a lot of curves. It's better to change the name because it's often confusing. These nubs are called hair nubs. Since the pass is from the back of the head, I will call it back hair. Now change the BB of this pass to an object instead of a round. I'll do it in a clearly visible location. If you use an eyedropper on an object and specify a hair nub, it will look something like this. If you adjust the scale here, the hub will only become longer in length like this. You can reduce the thickness with Alt-S. This Alt-S enlarges and reduces the scale of the mesh in the normal direction that each part faces. In HURBS, it is used to reduce the thickness like this. The end part like this will look thin. If you say you need more curls in this area, select 2 points. All you have to do is click, subdivide and adjust. And if you turn on the wireframe here, the wireframe will also be displayed on this curve. It feels a bit too tied up and down. You can also set the resolution in the properties of this pass. Adjust this to an appropriate value. Copy this with Shift-D and rotate it slightly with R and Z. You can fill your head by placing them next to each other. You can try reducing the thickness of this end with Alt-S. Gather the parts where they meet like this into an S. And at each point, use Ctrl-T to give the slope like this. Can represent pearl. You can also check this by adjusting the filter in the sidebar. There is something to be careful about here too. When tilting it downward or moving it like this, it's okay because it doesn't affect other parts. I'll hide it for a bit. There is no problem with this different part. The root part that becomes the hair root and, depending on the angle or distance between the second curve points, it affects everything like this until the end. There is no change at the end of this part. Gold just goes around. So you need to think about this. Now, what are the advantages of this curve? As you can see, it is very easy once you understand the principle. Even without precise positioning, it has been corrected to some extent. The edge spacing and other parts are pretty. After the invention of actually creating hair with curves. Because of this simplicity, most hair, it is often manufactured in a curved manner. But that doesn't mean there aren't any drawbacks. First of all, because this is not a mesh rigging in this state, I can't unfold the UV. So I converted it to a mesh. I need to do these things. After that stage, it won't be a curve anymore, so it will be a bit tricky to modify. And because other parts are affected by the movement of the root part mentioned earlier, it may not be intuitive at times. So, every time you move the upper part, there are quite a few cases where the entire thing is readjusted or readjusted. Nevertheless, it is the best choice when making hair. For example, let me move this up for a moment and remove the others. We make hair without illustrations or anything like that. While working, you may want to create illustration-based hair. You can also get artwork-based work. Now, this screenshot is not a 3D avatar. Let's think of it as a 2D illustration. In order to see this curve and the image on the back, go to wireframe view. I'm going to make this side hair. Place each dot along the image like this and set it in place. First of all, in order to erase what was put on the slope, I'll right-click and do a clear tilt. After selecting all, use Ctrl-T to outline the shape. Continuing to position it and tilting it like this. Fit it exactly like the image. Adjusting the thickness with Alt-S. If you work by matching the reference in this way, when you have an original illustration, if you create it one by one like this, hair work will become incredibly easier. In conclusion, virtual avatar hair is among the two methods, curve method and mesh-based extrusion method. Thinking about which would be better. In many cases, the better of the two methods is selected and used in combination. The hair we will make now has a high proportion of curves. Among the things I learned today is Alt-S to control the thickness of the curve. I think you just need to know that Ctrl-T is what gives the tilt. Next time, I'll think a little about how to structure the hair in earnest. Let's make a space avatar's short bangs.